These two KSK issued helmets can be seen over a decade apart, yet they're all iconic pieces of the Germans' Tier 1 operation unit during the global war on terror. As you guys know, I'm a big Speziiell collector, and the helmets are some of my absolute favorites. And as with a lot of gear from a lot of countries during GWOT, the transformation and technology adaptation and growth was drastic. So that's why today on the Gear.Locker, we're going to be taking a look at the evolution of helmets used by the KSK during the global war on terror. Now, the four examples I have in front of me are iconic, but there is one that I think is worth mentioning before we get to our first version. And this is one that didn't really see much use of the KSK at all in theater. In Germany, though, it absolutely did see some use in training, and this is the Schuberth 828 Sprunggefechtshelm. This paratrooper helmet is sort of goofy looking, and again, didn't really make it in Afghanistan where the KSK were operating in the early 2000s. Because yes, the German Special Forces were there during the early years of the GWOT, taking part in operations like in Tora Bora with the British SAS and US Delta Force, even to rescuing civilians in the 2020s, the Kabul airport disaster. But most of the equipment that they used was greenside, so to speak, even though they were in the desert. It was heavy reconnaissance style equipment, not necessarily built for direct action, so helmets weren't really the norm. However, this Sprunggefechtshelm did show up stateside in training photos, like here seen in 2004. You can also see this style of helmet painted up and used with other units, but with the KSK, I'd say this is one of the most iconic usages of it. But as we jump forward a few years, particularly and especially around 2008, we see the first helmet that we have in hand show up. And no, this is not an ACH or a Mitch 2000. This is a lookalike that was made by MSA as well. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a copy of the Mitch, but it is that style, and this is the MSA Gallet, to the Bundeswehr known as the Gefechtshelm Schwer, the combat helmet heavy. Again, maintains that style that was seen with other operational forces throughout the early parts of that decade. It is slightly different in the overall shaping of the helmet and the ear cutout and spacing of some parts, but again, it has a similar profile. But this was used with the KSK quite a bit in the late 2000s, and you can see iconic photos of these, especially in trainings in 2008. These are all painted up and dolled up in a beautiful tan color, but these do still last beyond that into the early 2010s. Sometimes you'll see fantastic and beautiful paint jobs on these, but I opted to keep mine the standard classic green for a couple of reasons. Number one, who this came from, this is his exact helmet setup. The Velcro, glint square, Lucy claw, and all. I even kept some of the original pads he had in here. Not all of them are original, but the front and back ones are these, like, I don't know if they're FMA or whatever, but they came from him as well. But this iconic piece wasn't exclusive to the KSK. And in fact, some of the other helmets that we are going to take a look at aren't either. And that's where we get to the younger brother of this Gefechtshelm Schwer. Here we get another MSA helmet, an MSA Gallet, the MSA TC APH, one that I've talked extensively about on this channel, but primarily in older videos. And this is known in the Bundeswehr as the Gefechtshelm Leicht, or the light combat helmet. As you can see, typical with the combat helmets that we know of the time, this is like the Mitch 2000 and this is like the Mitch 2001, where you have the ear cutouts and this one has the ear covers. Pretty interesting design that MSA wanted to modify the shape and everything a little bit differently, but still keep that same structure. And this, similar to the Schuberth 828, was a paratroop helmet. And initially, the internal pad system was this very complex and overdone helmet pad system, if you ask me. So when the pad system was taken out, replaced with all the nice classic ones that we know of, and the helmet strap modified to either an X-nape or an H-nape, these things became pretty prominent. You'll see the KSK use it in this classic green color in a bunch of their trainings, especially when you hit that very late 2000s to early 2010s. I did get this one from a Bundeswehr member, so it has the appropriate stickers on the inside, but they did drill out some holes for their own NVG mount. I have since covered and repainted the helmet to match the correct coloration. But as you can see, this is one of the most classic helmets with the Kommando Speziiell Kräfte, and lasted quite a bit of time, which obviously, once they get in country, they're going to be modifying it. You're not going to be in the deserts wearing this bright green helmet, so paint jobs came into play. And this is one of my favorite forms of expression when you want to do your own KSK kit, especially in this early time frame. Still, from the very late 2000s to the early 2010s, you'll see these MSA TC APHs prominently. And truthfully, oftentimes, still up until like 2014. These paint jobs were all over the place, but I copied a style similarly copied. I didn't do a direct one-to-one of a color scheme in one of my favorite books, Speed Action Surprise. I maintained some of the cool accessories like the MS-2000 strobe, Surefire HL1, and the beautiful MSA TC APH specific Lucy claw up front. The internal pad system is the classic standard that you expect to see with ACH style helmets, and the sticker that you see inside here is actually one of my custom repros. Regardless, this style of combat helmet was unfortunately short-lived in the grand scheme of things. because around this time, again, that early 2010s, OpsCore flooded the market. All of the high-speed guys, the special boys, they were using the OpsCore fast ballistic helmets. Fast XP with the VAS shroud and all was one of the most popular in all the kinds of units that you would see doing special boy stuff over there. And the KSK, of course, during this time frame, wanted all that action. They were really into the Cry precision stuff. And sometimes you'll see things like Cry airframes and Cry uniforms. Christian Gerstner said that the transition from this style of helmet to the next one we're going to take a look at, which is an OpsCore one, is one of his favorite parts in the development of his time in the KSK. The development of equipment, I should say. And that's where we get this bad boy here. This is an OpsCore Fast XP ballistic helmet, the VAS version from 2013. I lied, it's 2012. Now, this, based on the provenance, I've done a whole video on, comes from a KSK operator. And there's an interesting story with how these particular ones were developed, because as you can tell, it's not your typical OpsCore Fast XP. There are some minor changes and additions, such as the extra Velcro here in the back, the 3 dots up here, the 2 dots in the front, and what I lovingly call the unicorn strip, which I have seen this referenced from other reenactors as that, so nice to see that phrase catching on. And then on the inside, the Lux Liner worm dial. And you see, as early as 2011, but primarily 2012 and 2013, the KSK were experimenting with these. You start to see them show up in publicized photos as early as 2014, but reports say that these came out even earlier than that. And modifications like this were likely done by Hexonia when they were in the testing phase of these helmets here. You see, not long after these came about and these modifications were done, Hexonia put in their bid with the German Bundeswehr and got a contract to produce helmets like this. Except they weren't producing them per se, they were taking OpsCore Fast XP ballistic helmets and doing all these fancy modifications, all to sell in huge marked up packages to the Bundeswehr. They came with a slew of accessories in a huge bag, including the bump helmet system, this extra Velcro for NVG attachments, these 3 pieces up front, which I previously mentioned, for a slap armor plate, and of course the added comfort of the worm dial. And from then on, the KSK used almost exclusively these helmets, the Hexonia Speziiell helmets. Yes, they are modified OpsCore Fast XPs, but Hexonia had their own branding on them, and they're pretty elusive in the collector's community. So that's why I've done videos on how to build your own, but having a piece like this, which was original and has provenance to the KSK, is pretty darn cool, especially because this is a very early on testing piece. And of course, when they get big contract items like this, they're gonna hang on to them for a while. And truthfully, the KSK did hang on to these until the end of the global war on terror. There you see other helmets come into play with the KSK, but this one is one of the most iconic, and you can always spot those googly eyes from a distance. While the comfort is unmatched, I really think the vibes of the MSA TC APH are really where it's at for the KSK. But regardless, these are iconic and I love to see them in kits, especially when they're built out, custom built at home. So check out the Discord and send your own KSK helmet builds. I'd love to see them. Regardless, I hope you guys found this video interesting, showcasing the different helmets used with the KSK during the global war on terror. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. Let me see those pictures of your helmets, and we'll see you guys in the next one.